Hey, what's going on, you all? So welcome back to another video. I want to try to make this video really short, or go as fast as I can, because I have a lot of points that I want to make. But before I get into the video, I want to be clear about something. What I'm about to talk about is something that I've witnessed, with other people, and something that I have personally experienced. And so you don't have to take my advice, and you're free to make your own choices about your own relationships, who you hang with, and your own social circles. Because my goal here isn't to tell you what you must do, but it's simply to share a cautionary tale, add a different perspective, and give you a little bit of advice if you want to take it. So if you haven't gone through this, that's great. I hope you never do. But please don't come and gaslight or dismiss other people's experiences by saying, well, in all my years, that's never happened to me. And, I don't associate myself with people who do that. And so you all need to change your social circle, because that's the line we love throwing out at people. And the truth is, just because you haven't lived it or had it, done to you or spoken to you out loud doesn't mean that, people haven't felt that way. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get into the video. So you ever notice that, when couples start hanging out with other couples, things start to get a little twisted. Like on the surface, it looks fun. You have the double dates, you have the group dinners, you have the vacations together. But underneath, there's this strange undercurrent, I want to say. Like everyone's performing a little bit, because the second, another couple enters the room, then, your relationship is no longer your relationship. It becomes like a performance or a stage, right? So let me put it like this. So let's say you go out to dinner and it's just the four of you, and somebody makes a joke. Your partner doesn't laugh. Normally, that would just be a moment between the two of you that, y'all would just pass off because, let's be honest, your significant other isn't always funny all the time. Okay? Let's be honest. But in a group setting, suddenly it's a thing. You can almost feel like the other couple clock it like, did you see that? She didn't laugh at his joke. And then one little non-reaction gets turned into, this whole entire map of data points about your relationship based on what they see. And, and here's the kicker. Most people, they almost always try to look for those imperfections. You know what I'm saying? Not because they necessarily hate you per se, but because, imperfections make other people feel better. When they notice a crack in your foundation, then they can relax about the cracks in their own foundation. So when that starts happening, that's when, the gossip creeps in. And then later on, the same people are just like rehashing it, like saying to themselves, something seemed off between them tonight. Did you see that? Or did you notice how he have hugged her instead of pulling her close? And now your private dynamic has like become like this public commentary. The same way celebrities get discussed in tabloids, regular people, they get discussed too. You know what I'm saying? And if you think it's harmless chatter, just wait until that gossip loops back around and you're involved in it, because it almost always does. It almost always does. And let me add another layer, the fake concern, okay? There's almost always that one person in the group who isn't truly content in their own situation. And they'll zero in on someone else's partner. Like they'll maybe notice like your spouse may look tired or may seem frustrated, whatever's going on. And instead of just minding their business and just moving along, they'll slide in later with, that real soft, concerning voice like, hey, are you okay? You can talk to me if there's something wrong. Now on the surface, that sounds kind, right? It sounds kind. But I tell you guys in all my videos, there's always something that you don't see, because underneath that's an opening, that's someone trying to build a back channel of intimacy with your partner, and it becomes less about helping and more about inserting themselves. And the danger with that is that, once your partner confides, and they don't know no better sometimes, and once they confide just even a little bit, then that balance will shift. Because suddenly that outsider feels closer to your spouse than you do. And, they hold on to those little secrets, you know, and if conflict ever erupts, they weaponize it. They almost always weaponize it. They'll say, well, that's why your wife told me you did this, and that's why your husband said you did that. And it's like, now you got this triangle instead of a partnership. And these triangles are messy because now you're sitting there like, yeah, well, I did say that, but I didn't tell you like that. You know what I'm saying? So if you notice, the same thing will also happen like outside of a relationship. Like it happens with individuals. Like let's say someone gets caught doing something like just real mean. And their first instinct, when they get caught is to like cry and say, that's not who I am. But, in reality, it is. It just, the side of themselves that they want to keep hidden. And we all have that because we all have a self story. We all build that self story of ourselves. Like, I'm a good person, I never do something like that, but when that mask slips, that panic sets in because we all got a mask. That's the dark side of human nature. We all got one, and then they want to scramble to protect that image and call it like, an exception or, I just had an oops moment, because that crack kind of gives them away. So now we got to patch that crack up, and what it is that crack is like a glimpse into who they are when really nobody's watching. Like I said, we all got one. We all do. Here's the truth. Most people, they can't resist comparison. That's why I believe social media is the way it is because we all have to get on there and just show somebody like, hey, look at my vacation, look at my career, look at my home, And yes, even our relationships or marriages, like hanging out as a couple often turns into this silent competition that sometimes you guys don't see. It becomes like who's more affectionate, who looks happier, who buys the nicer gifts. And sometimes people even like come up to you and say, oh my God, what did he get you for your anniversary? Or I know he did something, for you on your birthday. What did he do? And they really don't care what he did. That's not their concern. What they want you to do is tell them so they can like calculate it. They can price it. Oh, he bought her Louis Vuitton, purse. Okay, that purse is such and such, just to kind of gauge your value or what someone thinks of you. You know what I mean? And so instead of strengthening these bonds, it creates this pressure to perform. And you just can't be. You can't be yourself because you're busy managing like your optics. You're busy measuring how people see you, right? And here's where it gets really subtle if you pay attention. Even when nobody says anything outright, you still feel watched. Every, laugh, touch or whatever it may be, someone is interpreting that. And that constant scanning means like you're never fully relaxed. You just can't be like husband, you just can't be wife. You know what I mean? So let me just go ahead and paint like a really quick picture since it's on my mind. So imagine you and your partner, like y'all are at a barbecue with some friends and like he's grilling over there and you're like chatting it up with another couple. So someone like makes or asks like a casual question like, does he always cook? And you just simply say, no, this is one of those rare times. Now you're not thinking nothing about it, but you're like, no, this is one of those rare times. And now since you said that, that person is thinking to themselves, oh, so he doesn't help much at home. See, that's what they just turn it into. That little moment becomes part of, their private narrative about your marriage because that's what they want it to mean. They want it to mean that way. So, they look for those cracks in others so they don't feel alone with if they're experiencing any dissatisfaction. And let me also explain something to y'all too, okay? One of the quickest ways that someone can get at you is by aiming at your spouse or whoever you're with because they know that's where your deepest emotions and trust lies. You know what I mean? Like that's your soft spot. They know that. And an insult at you directly, yeah, it may sting, it may hurt, you may get a little mad, but it really won't shake your foundation. Oftentimes, like we'll get mad, but it really won't shake our foundation. But, when you come for the person that you have emotionally invested in, the person you married, the person you love, when someone comes for that, it calls your judgment into question. It questions your bond, or even your worth. And so that's why it hits so hard, because you'll defend your spouse sometimes harder than you'll even defend yourself, and if you think about it, a lot of times it's not about you. It's and all these videos, like when I tell you guys, it's not really about you. You can always tell really how messed up someone is. It's how they treat people unprovoked. You know what I'm saying? So the quickest way to get to you is to attack your partner. It's just your partner just becomes the shortcut to get to you the quickest when they want to. So that's why a lot of times when you all come back from these little group hangouts and stuff, you feel drained, you feel tired, you just want to go home and go to bed, because you had to perform. That's why. It wasn't just about the small talk. It was the silent pressure of being evaluated. And that's why a lot of times people have to go home and recharge, because they had to perform. Now I don't think it's always toxic, because I believe some couples are mature. They sit with other couples and they're genuinely supportive. They hang out without turning things into a competition. So I do believe, those people are out there. But the reality is most people carry their insecurities into those settings when they go. So when you say, couples probably shouldn't hang out with other couples, you're kind of speaking about a hidden truth, because sometimes like protecting your relationship really means limiting the audience. You have to limit the audience, not because like you're antisocial, because if you do that, people going to say, oh my God, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with her? Why they never want to hang out? But, because you personally feel like your relationship isn't a public show. It doesn't need spectators. It really needs space. And so the bigger takeaway that I want you all to remember is that, I personally feel like a healthy relationship thrives in privacy, because the fewer eyes on your every move, the less you feel the need to perform, and the more you can be, actually be authentic, with the person you're with. So, yes, these like dinners, they may look cute on Instagram, you know what I'm saying? But behind closed doors it's often I want to call it like a pressure cooker of subtle judgment, this fake concern and this quiet competition. And if you're really not careful, those dynamics will do more damage to your bond than you realize. So I just wanted to come and share that with you all. And I need to go to bed. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.